will be selling your car, right? So you need to be careful with your priorities, right? So yeah, it's within, and it's within the individual's preference, but you need to be careful with the priorities, right? So I'm just going to undo. Yes, right? So what do we have in finance that at your level, which is grade 11 and 12, we have, oh, this is totally based on grade 12. So to mention this finance is directly on grade 12, right? So what happens is that at grade 12 level, you are restricted to two types of interest, right? We have what we call a simple interest, and we have a simple interest and and a compound and a compound interest, right? So let's look. So I believe you are familiar with them. Usually when I teach, I start everything from the ground, right? As I mentioned, so you just simply pretend as if you don't know anything, and then you will grasp new things, right? So I'm just going to draw four equations, right, that you are familiar with, right? So the first equation that we have on this side, we have a p 1 minus, okay, we have in, and then we have another equation under simple interest. After writing these equations, I'm going to explain everything. Now it's a matter of writing these equations, right? Okay, now we have the last equation. We have the last equation, yes. Right. So at a grade 12 level, we are restricted to two types of interest, right? And then we'll say in this case, we'll be dealing with the simple interest and the compound interest, right? And then we have two formulas, we have two equations under simple interest as well as compound interest, right? I want us to start with the compound interest, right? You need to note that these equations have their own special names. So they have their own special names, right? And then I'm going to mention this. When we say something appreciates, when we say something appreciates, it simply means its value increases. So its value do what? Increases. So we are saying that thing increases, it's increasing in value, right? Its value increases. And when something depreciates, we are saying it loses value. This way it loses value, right? Meaning the amount of the current amount of that certain thing is smaller. The current amount of that thing is smaller than the previous amount, the same thing. So whenever we have something appreciating, we say okay, it increases value, right? There is an increase in value, meaning that the current amount of that certain thing is greater than the previous amount, right? So we have these two kinds of equation, right? I'm about to explain. I'm going to start with the first one, right? Looking at the simple interest, and the same thing, looking at these variables, they remain the same, right? And then the first thing that we have this a. What is a? A is known as the accumulated. A is known as the accumulated what? It is known as the accumulated amount, right? And then I will explain what is the accumulated amount, right? You shouldn't be stressed. And then P, it is known as the principal. It is known as the principal or the original amount. So can I please erase this just to fix my handwriting since okay. So we are saying our A is what? Our P in this case, we are saying P is known as the principal. P is known as the principal amount, right? Not the principal, but the principal amount, or the original amount. So in this case, you are saying, okay, P is known, we are saying A is known as the accumulated amount, P is known as the principal amount or the original amount. Here's our I being our interest. I is the interest and N is the period. Like I said, N is the period. I never said N is the number of years. I said N is the period, right? Now I want you to note, right, that in this particular financial literacy, we'll be dealing with an inflation, right? Can I write here? We'll be dealing with what do you call an inflation, right? And deflation, right? I will explain. And inflation is the increase. It's things, whenever the prices of goods rises, right? Whenever the prices of goods rises, we're saying we experience what? An inflation, right? And then whenever we have deflation, is whenever the goods become to be cheaper, right? This way we have deflation, right? And we don't have a constant amount in which the goods in which the prices of the goods goes up, right? So we don't have a regular increase. We don't have a regular increase on someone, right? We don't know. So it changes, right? So today a rate can change. It can be 16 lines, the second day being 18 lines. We don't know, right? We don't know the amount in which it increases by, right? Meaning it changes as time goes on. The same thing with deflation. So whenever we experience inflation, I want you to note, whenever we experience inflation, like I said, this is where the prices of the goods goes up. This is where the goods starts to be expensive. In 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 the other ways, we can say this this is where the goods starts to be expensive, right? So note that whenever something inflates, its current amount won't be the same as the previous amount. And since we are saying inflation is the increase in price of the goods, which means the current amount will be greater than the previous amount, because what happens, the prices went up, right? And then whenever we speak about deflation, here was it's a vice versa. The prices go down, meaning the current price of a certain good is lesser than the previous price, right? Why? Because of the cost went down, right? The same thing happens whenever we're dealing with what do we call a scrap value, right? Or a book value. Now I want you to note the technique used to calculate this, we use the same what? We use the same technique. What I'm trying to say is that you are going to use the same formula to calculate for the scrap value or the book value. The difference between the two is that when someone is at, right? Whenever something is on, okay? Can I do this? Whenever something is on scrap value, it simply means that thing has no life, right? it can it has no life, right? Whenever something has book value, let's say this thing has more life to come, right? It can live up to many more years to come, right? Meaning it's a second hand thing, but it's still efficient, right? It is still advantageous to be used, right? So the technique remains to be the same. This is where whenever something is on scrap value, it simply means it has lost value, right? It simply means that it depreciates. The same thing whenever we have a book value, it depreciates, right? But it has more life in this case, right? So what happens? So we are saying, back to our simple interest, is that we said we have A, right? A known as the accumulated amount, right? I want you to note about A that whenever I take A as the amount after. Now here's the question. So you don't really need to know the meaning of an accumulated amount, the scientific meaning, but just simply take it as the amount after. Now, here's the question: the amount afterward. It can be the amount after inflation or the amount after deflation. It can be the amount after there's an increase in value or the amount after there's a decrease in value. Right? So A simply means after. That A stands for after. That is the amount after. And then P, my P, if because A and P are my amounts. If I'm saying that I'm assigning A as my amount after, it simply means P will be my amount what? Will be my amount before what? It can be before an increase in value or before a decrease in value. The moment you are able to the moment you are able to assign your A and P with this after and before, things becomes easier. You are able to identify your A and you are able to identify your P, irrespective of their scientific meaning, right? I understand we really do maths, and then we'll come to that, right? So, like I said before, these four equations have special names, right? And like, okay, they have what? They have special names, right? So, since we know that when something appreciates, it increases in value. When something appreciates, it increases in value. When something depreciates, it loses value, right? So when it appreciates, the value increases. When it depreciates, the value decreases, right? So now let's head to the special names of the equation, right? The first equation that I wrote under simple interest, right? We have A equal to P. I want you to note, because of we are dealing with a simple interest, all of the equation under simple interest will be, all of the equation will start with simple. All of the equation under simple interest will start with simple, right? And then the second term for that special name, we have the special name, right? And each special name consists of two weights. The first weight will be simple, right? And the second weight is determined by the sign in the middle of the equation, right? It is determined by the sign in the middle of the equation, right? Now let's start. So the first equation that I wrote, I'm speaking about this equation, right? The first equation that I wrote is known as simple appre appreciation. It is known as simple appreciation, right? And then we said when something appreciates, this is when it increases what? This is when it increases in value. It is known as simple appreciation or simple simple increase. Why are we saying simple increase? No, 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 no. Sorry. These are for the one with the plus sign. This equation will correspond with the plus sign because we're speaking about an increase in value, which means here we'll have a negative. Now, I want you to note, students, right? I want you to note, please be with me on this one. So we're saying, because of, why am I saying we have to have a positive sign here? Is because of we are dealing with an increase in value. So we're saying, because of the positive sign on my equation, I will have a simple appreciation, right? Why? Because of, we know that an increase, a positive sign has to do with an increase in something, right? So we'll have a simple appreciation, a simple increase, or is known as a simple growth, right? So all of this mean the same thing. They describe the first equation, right? And then the second equation, still we are still under the simple interest, is that the A, the P, right? A, P, I, and N. Okay, A, P, I, and N remain remains the same, right? The same amount that we spoke about before, the accumulated amount, the principal amount, the interest, the period, they remain to be the same, right? The only difference here is that we have a minus sign, right? Like I said, the special weight, right, consists of the two way. The special terms for this consist of two ways, right? And then the sample, since you are under sample interest, the first weight will be sample. But now in this case, we are not dealing with an increase. We are dealing with a negative sign, and we know that a negative sign has to do with a decrease in something. So now we'll have a simple decrease, right? And then if we don't want to say a simple decrease because of it is not appreciating, we have a negative sign, it is depreciating. We have a simple depreciation. Sorry, it has to be depreciation, right? And then lastly, instead of having a growth, we'll have, what do we call, a simple decay, right? Now the same thing will apply on the compound interest, right? So in the right hand side, my AP, I and N remains the same, right? So they remains the same, right? So what happens is that instead of writing a simple, I'll have a compound one. Because of if you have a negative sign, it will be a compound decrease, right? And then the same thing applies with the other way. It can be a compound. Instead of appreciation, it will be depreciation, right? And then I will have another weight which is compound. Instead of growth, I will have decay, right? Why decay? Because of it is, I have a negative sign, right? And we have the most important, we are left with two most important ways. If sometimes this is what they do, right? These are the most important ways. Can I write them in blue? These are the most important ways that the examiner is assigned, right? So the first thing that we have is that the we have another one called the reducing balance method. We have the reducing balance method, right? Because in this formula is also known as the reducing balance method, or the diminishing or the diminishing or the diminishing method. So the moment you see the reducing balance method, just simply know it's a compound decrease. The moment you see the reducing balance method, it simply means it's a compound decrease, right? We're saying the diminishing method as well as the reducing balance method are, we're saying they refer to the compound decrease, meaning you have to use these formula, right? So I'm not going to do for the positive sign for this equation, because we know that it's going to start with comp, and because of we have, it will be compound, and then because of this positive sign will remain to have those appreciation, the increase, the growth, and others, right? And then, since the main thing that we need to focus on are these special ways, you see, the diminishing method as well as the reducing balance method, right? And on the simple interest, what is the important? Okay, here they may use the straight line basis. Here they may use what you call the straight line basis. So you already know the straight line method or the straight line basis refer to a simple decrease, right? While the diminishing and the reducing balance refer to a compound decrease in this, right? So let's dwell into the real stuff, right? So now at grade 12 level we have, what do we call, annuity. Sorry, can I change my pad? Let me try to remove this. Okay. Now we have what do we call annuity. And what is annuity? We're saying annuity is a regular. We're saying annuity is a regular payment. So it's a regular payment into an account. So what is meant by that? We're saying annuity. Annuity is N here is double N, sorry. We're saying annuity is a regular payment into an account. What is meant by that, right? So suppose I have to pay someone monthly, right? Or weekly, right? And then I have to pay someone weekly, right? And then on this week, I give that particular person maybe let me say 10 rand, right? The second week I give him 100 rand, and then the other week, and then I give that particular person, now I'm giving the person 500. Is there any regular, do you see, is it a regular payment? Is there any consistency? Looking at these payments, there is no consistency, right? Therefore I will not identify this as an annuity. I will not. Why am I saying this? Because we are saying annuity is a regular what? It's a regular payment, right? Meaning we have to maintain consistency. You have to maintain consistency, right? So literally it simply means that I will pay whenever we are looking at annuity. If I'm paying tenant, I will pay. I'll continue on pay. I'll continue on paying tenant until a certain event, right? I'll be continuing. Looking at this payment, it is we maintain consistency. Therefore, it is a regular. Therefore, it is a regular payment. This becomes our annuity, right? Like I said, we're saying an annuity is a regular payment into an account, right? Then I'm saying I will not identify a scenario where the amount is not constant as an annuity, because we have to maintain consistency. Our amount our amount has to be regular, right? And then okay, it's a regular payment or deposit. Sorry, not to mention that. It's a regular payment or deposit into an account. So we have two types of annuities. So we have annuity due, right? We have annuity due, and we have what do we call the ordinary annuity, and we have what do you call the ordinary annuity. Now can I please let me just need a line here, right? So what is annuity due, right? We're saying annuity due. Okay, we explained annuity, right? So we're saying annuity due is I would say it's an normal situation, right? This way, whenever you take a loan or whenever you deposit money, you deposit immediately, right? For you to be able to identify whether your annuity is due, this is where the moment you see, okay, for you to be able to identify whether you have annuity due or ordinary annuity, I want you to look at this. The moment you see immediately, right, or at the beginning, the moment you see immediately or at the beginning, the moment you see immediately or at the beginning of, it can be maybe a month, a week, a year, it depends, right? So the moment you see immediately or at the beginning, just simply know that you have an annuity due. You have what? You have an annuity due, right? And then the moment you see at the end of, so the moment you see at the at the end of, it can be a month. The moment you see at the end, it can be a week or a year. The moment you see at the end of, it simply tells you that you have the ordinary annuity. Now, the difference between the two is that one will have an effect on your formula, right? So for instance, we want to see, right? So what happens in annuity? What happens in ordinary annuity? What is the difference between the two? You may ask yourself this question. So now I'm about to explain, right? Like I said, annuity due is like an abnormal situation, and the ordinary annuity it's a normal situation. You will see what is meant by that. So suppose, let me do this. Right, we have to 0. So suppose I'm depositing money into a bank, right? Monthly. Suppose I'm depositing money in the bank monthly, right? and then these are my payments. This T represents my payment. Now suppose I deposit money, and then for in ordinary annuity we are saying at the end of. So suppose I deposit money at the end of every month. Looking at T0, this is the beginning of the month. This is the beginning of the month, right? So but I'm depositing at the end of every month. So what happens that at the end, looking here's T1, that's the beginning of the month. Here's T0. T0, that's the beginning of the month, and T1 is the end of the month, right? So which means I'm going to start paying at T1 because of it is the end of my month. We're saying this, it is the start, right? It is the beginning of the month. And in ordinary annuity, I'm paying at the end of 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 the month, right? I'm saying suppose I pay at the end of the month, right? I want you to look at this. Suppose I pay at the end of the month. Suppose I pay at the end of the month. I will have X, right? And then at T2 it is the end of another month. I'll pay another X. And then at T3 is the end of the month. I'll pay another X, right? How many payments did I make? I make, let's count, 1, 2, 3. I made how many payments? I made 3 payments, right? At the end of each and every month. The same scenario will happen, right? So suppose now, so this is what will happen. I will have 3 payments in ordinary annuity. Now we are looking at the difference. So in annuity due, I'm trying to fix my timeline here, please. Oh yeah. So in annuity due, we are saying immediately or at the beginning. So at T0, like I said, at T0, it is the at T0 is the start of each is the start of a month. It can be a year or a month or a week, right? So we are saying we are paying immediately or at the beginning of the month. If I'm paying at the beginning of the month, it simply means that at T0 I'm going to put another payment. And I want you to note that the end at T1 is the end of another month, right? I want you to know that at the end of the month, it is at the end of the month, it is the beginning of the other. Meaning at T1 I'll put another X, right? The same thing applies at T2. We'll say at T2 it is the end of another month, right? We're saying the end of a certain month is the beginning of the other. So I'll pay because I'm paying at the beginning, right? And then the same thing applies at T3. Here I've paid because T3 is the end of the month, but the beginning of the other month. Now I want you to look at my payments. How many payments? I have 1, I have 2, I have 3, I have 4. You see? And why are we saying why am I saying it's an abnormal situation? I cannot take a loan and pay immediately. You see, it's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not. It's not normal, right? But looking at the difference between the two, in this annuity, I had how many payment in annuity two, which is abnormal. I had 4 payments, and then in ordinary annuity I had the repayment. What does this simply means that what does this mean? This simply means that whenever I have annuity due, I add 1 to my n. And in this case, what happened? What was my n? My n was 3. So what did I do? I added 1 to my n to get 4. You may be surprised about this n, right? I will ask you not to be, because I'm about to introduce the formula that relates to whatever I'm speaking about, right? So I know theory is boring, but we will be done. We'll be done with this theory. Okay, let me just simply go and then try to find, a space. We'll be done with this. We'll be done with this very soon, and then we'll head to the question. Yeah. So don't be surprised about this end, right? Now I want you to note, right, that we have the examples of the annuities, right? We have the examples of the annuities. Can I please remove this? Yes, because we need a space where we can write. Okay. Oh, let's do this cheat, right? Guys, I'm not really cheating. Okay, let's do this. Right, just want to enlarge my page. Yeah, you see. um okay, yeah, so we have the examples of these annuities, right? So the first thing that we have what do we call a future we have what do you call a future value, right? And a future value is just simply a clear word which explains itself. This is the amount that we're going to use in the future, right? And then for example, it can be the savings, right? We can have savings. Obvious, whenever I save, I'm going to use that amount in the future. It can be savings, it can be investment, right? It can be um what do you call how can I forget that oh, a sinking fund can be a sinking fund. And what's the thing sinking fund? A sinking fund is an amount an amount used to it's an amount used to replace old materials. It is an amount used to replace what? It is an amount used to replace old materials. So we have and minimum, right? So we're saying future value is an amount that we're going to use in the future, right? So we have two types of our annuities being the future value. We have two types of our examples, right? The example of our annuities. We have the future value as well as as well as the pre as well as the present value. And in this case I'm saying the present value is what? In this case I'm saying the present value is the amount that currently you do have. You can use that amount at that particular time. It's like taking a loan, right? You cannot wait for you to be able to take a loan, right? Or lottery wins. When you have won when you on lotto, what do? You have the previous, you have the present value, right? And then here we speak about lump sum of money, right? You cannot say whenever you have maybe two rent and say you have a present value. No, no, no. We are dealing with lump sum of money in this case, right? And other more retirement package. Now I want you to listen to this. We have on this scenario of retirement, we have what do you call the retirement contribution, right? We have what do you call the retirement contribution and the retirement package. So this what happens whenever, like, for instance, right? Suppose I have a parent, right, who's working, right? And then we know that as time goes on, there will be some point where they will end what do we call pension, right? So so where does that money come from? That money, they were not just given that amount. They've worked for the money. It's just that whenever they receive their wage, they've took what happens that the company or that certain institution, they do what? They take some lump sum of money aside, right? For them to be able to give that particular person in the future in the form of a retirement package. So whenever that person gets the money, that person now she or he has the money on they have the money now on themselves. So what happens? It's a package of that money. Now it's a present bill because they have it. But while they were working, they had what do you call retirement contribution. So they didn't have their money on themselves, but that money was taken into a certain account which will contribute to the retirement package. You see, so in that particular pension scenario, we can break into two parts. We have a retirement contribution, which is the amount that they took from their salaries while they were still working, and then whenever they retired, what happened? They received a retirement package, right? So now it becomes the present value because they have the money at that certain time. You see? So now we have the example, we have these two values, right? So wait, sorry for a moment. Let me do this. Um sorry for that. Someone is at the door, but it's sorted, right? Now Okay, I have a new page, right, whereby I wrote where I wrote those equations, right? So the equation for future value and the present value, right? I want you to know that for future value we have what? I want you to know that for future value, we are saying for future value we have savings, we have investment and sinking fund. And we are saying sinking fund it is the amount that is used to do what? We are saying a sinking fund is the amount that is used to replace old materials. Right? Can I do this? Just wanna verify something. Okay. Yeah, we can continue. Yeah, it's recording. So let's go back to that. Let's hope okay. No, that's not okay. Let's try. Just want okay, let's try this one. No. Um I'm looking for okay. No, I'm looking for yeah, right? So here I wrote these equations, right? So under this we are on my left hand side we have future value, and then here we have the present value. We have we have the present, okay. We have the present value, right? And then beside under future value we had those examples being savings, investment, investment, right? Number three being a sinking fund, a fund. And I just remembered some of you, since you'll be going to varsity or to higher education, what happens is that some of your parents made sure that they provide you with an educational what? With an educational fund, right? Which is the amount that you'll be using whenever you reach, whenever you go at whenever you continue with your studies, right? So these are the examples of the future value. And then under present value we have a loan, right? Which sometimes they can say a mortgage, right? Just simply a mortgage is a loan, right? The moment I take a mortgage, it's a house on a loan, and then or lottery wins, right? As well as those bad ways and other things, those wins. We are speaking about the wins here, having that lump sum of money, right? And now we have okay. Now we have these variables assigned to these equations, right? So in this case, I remains the same. I remains to be the interest, right? And then we have n remains to be the period. N is the period, or what do we call the number of payment. N is the period or number of payment, right? And then we have x. X can be, in this case we're saying x, it's a monthly, okay, let's write it clearly. It's a monthly deposit. It can be a monthly deposit into an account, right? So the same thing, in looking at these variables remains the same, right? The only difference in future value and present value is that my x, it has to be now my x in present value, because we are speaking about the loan, it will be monthly what? It will be monthly payment, right? It will be a monthly payment or monthly installment. That's the only difference. it will be a monthly installment or a monthly payment or a monthly deposit. It will be a deposit whenever we're saving or investing, all right? But coming to a loan or a mortgage, it will be a monthly payment or a monthly installment, right? And means to be the period, I means to be the interest, right? And then PV simply means a present value, which is that amount of the loan. And then FV simply means the future value, which is can be the amount of the services or of the investment, right? Now we head to the last thing. Right? So on your eye, now we look at your eye, which is the interest. We look at your eye, which is the interest, and we look at I and sorry for this, and this is not an English class, but I for interest, and then we look for and as the period or number of payments, as the period or number of what of payments. So what happens, some of you may be confused whenever you see people dividing there, multiplying there. So just simply know on your eye you'll only divide, so on your eye you divide, right? On your eye you divide, right? And then on your end, what do? You multiply, right? I want you to know how, when do we not multiply, right? How when do you multiply? How do you know the effect on those formulas, right? And other applications of this division and multiplication set, right? I want you to know that we have number of compoundings. We have the number of compoundings. And where do you see number of compoundings? On this statement, on the statement. Whenever they say compounded quarterly, what is meant by that? Whenever they say compounded quarterly, it simply means on your eye you do what? You take your eye, you divide it by what? You take your eye and divide it by 4, and you take your n and you multiply it by 4.